Good evening. I'd like to call the City Council of the City of San Bruno to order for the meeting of June 23rd. To begin by thanking the San Bruno Garden Club for the flower arrangements they presented for this evening's meeting. If we could have roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Here.
Mayor Franzella.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here. If I could ask Councilmember Medina to lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just one announcement this evening. Following this evening's meeting, there'll be a redevelopment agency meeting. We have no presentations this evening or a review agenda. Approval of the minutes of the special study session of June 8th, the regular council meeting of June 9th, 2009, and special study session of June 16th, 2009. They'll stand approved as submitted unless there's any changes or corrections. Hearing none, they'll stand approved. Consent calendar. All items are considered routine and implement an earlier council action may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by council member, citizen, or staff. Any action from?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. In discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 8, public hearing. Item 8A, hold public hearing, adopt resolution approving city manager's recommended 2009-2010 general fund, special revenue fund, enterprise fund, and capital improvement budget. City manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we're here to ask your approval of the 2009-2010 fiscal year budgets for the general fund, the special revenue funds, the enterprise funds, and including the redevelopment agency, as well as the capital improvements program. This is the last in a series of meetings that you have conducted beginning back in January, where we first brought to your attention and you provided direction to address a serious shortfall in revenues for the current fiscal year, which is now rapidly drawing to a close. The council took immediate and effective action to direct reductions across the board to city operations that reduced overall expenditures by a total of $1.4 million in the current year. As of January, we projected a $2.2 million shortfall in revenues to projected expenditures for the coming fiscal year. And again, we have engaged with the council at study sessions on June 8th and June 16th to review this budget in detail, as well as a special mid-budget development meeting with the City Council, a study session on April 28th. So it's not my intent tonight to go into all of the various details of this budget, but to walk you through, primarily for the purposes of the record at a relatively high level, the overriding themes and issues that have driven the development of this budget and which have guided my recommendation for your approval of this budget as we continue into very challenging economic and financial times, both for this city as well as our state, our nation, and the world. We have prepared a brief PowerPoint tonight that tracks on a number of the issues that we have discussed with you previously, and I'll use that to organize the comments. First, with regard to the general fund budget, we are proposing a budget that is based on $30,967 of revenue. That compares to an adopted budget for the current fiscal year 08-09 of over $33 million in revenues. The primary impact to the city's revenue leading to the revenue to expenditure shortfall is a substantial decline primarily in tax revenues. And you see from the line chart that's on the screen before you is a substantial drop-off depicted in sales tax, a beginning but relatively significant drop-off in property taxes, relatively stable but beginning to decline hotel and motel taxes or transient occupancy tax. And in addition to that, a very significant fall-off in overall construction-related activity, particularly larger scale projects, and a consequent steep reduction in building permit revenue. The city has had a great deal of experience operating, developing budgets and operating throughout the year in constrained financial circumstances, none quite as difficult as this one. But as the next slide shows you, the city has historically adopted and managed to a balanced budget. And that's depicted on the chart that you have in front of you. Backing up again to January 12th of this year, the City Council provided specific direction to guide the development of the budget and to address the revenue shortfall that was, as I indicated, then projected at $2.2 million. And very specifically and first and foremost, and as a continuing very strong theme of the City Council, your direction has been that we present to you and that you will only consider adoption of a balanced budget. Your direction has included that that budget will not be balanced based on the use of reserves, that there will be specific policies and practices for the use of reserves, and that fundamentally this budget requires that there be no consideration of employee compensation increases at least through June 30th of 2010. The council also directed the establishment of an employee budget working group to evaluate the issues and present recommendations. That has been going on. That will continue as we embark on managing the budget that we're presenting to you tonight. And lastly, the council directed that we evaluate strategies for raising revenue. That effort will continue as well, and we have an item on tonight's agenda that represents the one aspect of that work effort, which is being brought to fruition tonight with your consideration of an ordinance to increase the transient occupancy tax. In summary, this budget is balanced. The financials in front of you demonstrate that we are projecting $30,967,304 in revenues, and expenditures of just over that at $31,737,802. Using a very small projected prior year balance forward of $29,000, and the use of non-operating revenues in the total amount of $760,000, we anticipate ending the coming fiscal year right at balance with a very small but positive amount remaining of just over $19,000. This budget was balanced in large measure by this budget that we're presenting to you tonight was balanced with using a variety of techniques. First and foremost, there are 10.5 full-time positions being eliminated compared to the current year. All of those positions are currently vacant, and the total combined dollar value of those positions is $900,500. In addition to that, as I indicated earlier, no increase to employee salary and benefits has been incorporated into this budget, along with the long list of items that you see in front of you, representing reductions to expenditure categories across the board. In particular, you see that supplies and materials in the amount of just over $300,000, contracted services over $400,000, And it changes to the amounts that we typically move between funds, and in particular it comes out of the general fund in the amount of almost $500,000 are the big items on that list. A very comprehensive process was utilized to identify those reductions, and unfortunately, but necessarily, there are impacts to a reduction of this magnitude. The list in front of you summarizes many, but certainly not all, of the specific public service impacts that we anticipate as a result of the very significant reductions that have been required in order to balance this budget. Just in very short summary, there's been a significant reduction via vacant position eliminations in the police department, making our staffing a bit more thin and needing to focus on priority calls, perhaps creating the impact of situations where police response to non-emergency calls may be, the response time might be increased. This budget proposes a reduction in public service hours at the library. The library will be open on Friday afternoons, but not all day on Friday. There is a proposal the budget includes reduction in the amount of attention that can be paid to landscape and open space maintenance. And as a result of one of the employee compensation changes that was incorporated into this budget, and that was in the form of a furlough that will affect all employees, but specifically non-safety facilities will be closed an additional 6 days during the year while employees are on unpaid furlough time off. Moving quickly to the enterprise funds and the capital improvement program. The enterprise funds, as the City Council is well aware, include our water, wastewater, stormwater, and cable operations. In each of those enterprises, operational costs are supported by fee revenues, ratepayer revenues. As the Council is aware, we recently completed an extensive process to evaluate projected costs over a 3-year period and to align the revenues via our fees with those necessary costs to maintain those critical services in those enterprises. The slide summarizes a variety of highlights that have been incorporated into this budget. In particular, we have a number of impacts that have driven the need for rate increases, including the cost of purchased water increasing by approximately 11%, sewer treatment costs, in particular at the treatment plant that we share with the City of South San Francisco, increasing by nearly 38%. Programming fees in our cable enterprise increasing by a total of over 15%. And as you see, we've again, I won't go through these in detail, but you see that we have commensurately, and in some cases at a lower amount than our costs have increased, been forced to address this through changes to our rate structure. Each of the enterprise funds budgets is also balanced with the use of the fee increases in the enterprise funds, and in each case an amount has been allocated for capital improvements. The list next in front of you, and I won't read each and every one of these, but the intent of the information is to demonstrate an aggressive capital improvement program, which has been the subject of many previous conversations with the City Council, highlighting the need to address utility and infrastructure, not just repair and rehabilitation, But over a longer-term planning period, the need actually to work towards replacement of that critical infrastructure. As an example, the city operates underground water and sewer main lines. Much of that infrastructure has been in place and generally operating for 50 years or more. In many cases, we have been forced over the past many years to take a kind of a Band-Aid approach where when it breaks, we fix it. This capital improvement program addresses that in a more deliberate and more comprehensive way by identifying a certain biting off every year an amount of main line replacement that will be part of our ongoing capital improvement program. You also see in this list a variety of projects that are trouble spots that need to be addressed in some manner, and we will be continuing, obviously, to take care of those problems as they present themselves. In addition, the capital improvement program takes advantage of any and all funds of grants that are available to the city, and you see that we will be proceeding with a street improvement project during the coming year that is funded by the Federal Stimulus Act and gives us some funding to do a street paving project. In this case, we'll be focusing on City Parkway, a heavily traveled street in our City Park area. In addition, we are continuing primarily using grant funds and redevelopment funds to improve the community in areas where the appearance of some of our street areas has become quite deteriorated due to many years since deliberate improvements were provided, and we will be rehabilitating median islands along El Camino Real during the coming year. With that, we're asking the council tonight, one, to hold a public hearing on the budgets, following the public hearing to take action by adopting the resolution that is provided to you in the packet that will adopt all of the budgets that we have previously discussed in detail with you. I would just add that the City Council, in taking this action, has the ability to make any changes that you wish to make at this time. There were a number of items that were discussed during the two recent budget study sessions, and the City Council has a short list of items that were left open for additional City Council discussion following our June 16th budget study session. City Council may wish to go through those specific items and reach a determination and provide direction to the staff as to your intent for those items to be or not to be included in the budget. At this time, the budget is presented to you, and we're asking for your approval in the same manner that we have presented it to you previously, with all of the reductions already fully incorporated into that budget. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from staff? From council at this time? Staff?
Gonna go through these, or?
We can do that now, or we can do that at conclusion.
I'm sorry.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is any member of the public wanting to address the council on the proposed budget? The council closes the public hearing. You will be precluded from speaking on it. Seeing no one wanting to speak, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
There's a gentleman who wants to speak.
415 Cedar Avenue, Stanley, Bruno. Every time I look at the budget, everything is going up in price. Everything increased, everything's increased. And I just went today and I purchased about $2,000 worth of tiles. And I was surprised when I got the bill for the tiles that there was three things on the budget that was never not on your, but on the where I purchased the tiles, of an increase: $18 for environmental, $26 for that. So the total on the $2,000 tiles, there was $83 added to the bill. And on this here, everything here is increased too. Where is the people going to get? The poor people in San Bruno, going to get the money to pay all this?
Well, now you know what we've been dealing with. This is actually decreased some $3 million. It hasn't increased. We've cut this budget
But
back.
you have an increase, I see here, an increase on all here, through here too. All services increased. And you're getting your water for nothing.
It's a decrease, and I'm not getting my water for nothing.
Yes, well,
sir.
well, the city of San Bruno is getting the water because they're pumping it from 5 wells.
Okay. Any other questions?
And I listened to Mr. Obama's this morning at 9:20, and he doesn't give much hope for cities for the next 2 years. And if you go to Michigan, what they're doing as of Friday, the potholes in the road, they're grinding them up and leaving them in raw. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Is there a motion to close the public
So
hearing?
moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, and discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discussion from council? Irene?
Before we start going through our list of proposed changes, I just want to thank the financial director and his team and the city manager and everyone else who's been involved in doing this budget. It's not easy, and I know every time you look at it and you look for places to save money, you look and see who might have to be laid off or who's going to suffer from it, and I know you do a very deliberate and considerate job of this, so I just want you to know that I know the whole council appreciates what you do. So having said that, I'd like to go through this list that we have and take each item, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, the first one we have recommend budget reduces line item from 3,800, considering additional reduction by 4,000 affecting appreciation events. I can't remember if that included the Narita, or was that the next one?
Yes, it's the Narita.
The line item
Including the
includes actually a total of $8,000. Of that amount, $3,000 is earmarked for Narita Sister City activities and $1,000 for employee appreciation. So there is $4,000 that is dedicated to appreciation events, and that's typically your boards and commissions. We have historically had an event that recognizes your appointees to boards and commissions. And that's the only portion of that line item that was intended on that list for
That's correct.
consideration.
Okay, so I'm sorry, so we're leaving Narita, the 3,000 for Narita.
Through the chair.
Okay.
When the first document came out, was what you're referring to, is that I called, when I brought this item up at the study session, it was for the one elimination out of that line item in the details, and that was the $4,000 for appreciation only events.
Okay.
Not the Sister City Narita, nor the employee recognition.
Okay. In that case, I agree with this. So do you want to take each item and make a
Why
motion
don't we-
to do it, or just do it all at once?
What's the council's pleasure? We can take them
I'd like a
individually.
little more clarification. I'm looking at the budget right now, and line item 6409 has $8,000 in it, and we're talking about appreciation amounts and Narita City amounts, and the proposal says for reduction of $3,800 and consider additional reduction of $4,000. I want to know what it actually the proposal is going to end up at. Is it going to end up at $200? Or is it going to end up at $4,200? What?
Through the chair, my intent is you had $8,000 in that line item, $4,000 would remain, which would account for $1,000 in employee recognition, those are the pins and certificates, for example. $3,000 in the Sister City Narita program would remain. The $4,000, which would be taken out of that line item, was for the appreciation, i.e. dinner for committee boards and commissions. That was my intent.
Just to clarify, the $3,800 that you're looking at is just an information piece to tell you that this budget was $3,800 more last year it's already been reduced by $3,800 compared to last year.
And if I could clarify again further, what's been proposed, the presentation we just completed is based on an 8,000, as far as we're concerned, on this item, it's based on an $8,000
That's correct.
budget, okay.
Yes.
So we would reduce that even more, okay. I'd like to ask the proposal, whether the proposer, what's the significance of eliminating an appreciation event by $4,000?
Through the chair. I think at a time when we're talking about reduction in hours of operations for City Hall, Library, Rec Center, we're talking about not filling vacant positions, for example, in the police department for police officers, when we're talking about furloughs, which are reduction in city staff out, what they're going to be taking home. I think at this challenging time, an appreciation dinner by the boards and committees and commissions who do volunteer their time, I think they would understand that in these times, that's something that we can get by without.
I disagree.
Okay, just so we can proceed, does the council want to take this item by item and vote on each item?
Probably have to.
Okay, so why don't we, so is there a motion on the first item to reduce that line item by an additional $4,000?
Before we do that, I'd like to consider a compromise. Instead of doing the whole 4,000, can we keep it $1,000 to do some kind of recognition for the boards and commissions? Maybe not a full sit-down dinner, which I agree can kind of look a little extravagant, but maybe we can do an alternative. You know, a dessert and coffee, have them come to a council meeting and be recognized. Something. I don't believe we even did the dinner last year.
We did nothing last year.
So I'd like this to keep $1,000 in there. So can we reduce it by 3,000?
Can do whatever the council desires.
There you go.
If there's a motion to reduce it by-
I move that we reduce it by only 3,000 instead of the 4 and keep $1,000 just in case we need it.
Okay. Is there a second?
No? Okay.
Motion dies for a lack of a second. Okay.
I'd just like to say that we have a balanced budget in front of us, and I believe we've cut $3 million. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars here, and we've now spent 10 minutes on $2,000 or $4,000. I mean, and on an issue that involves our residents, our volunteer residents, and I don't want to waste any more time on it. I think you know, if we didn't spend it last year, I mean, we should definitely spend it this year.
Through the chair.
Councilmember Medina?
Again, these are not the same old times. These are challenging times. These are difficult times. People are having to tighten their belt and balance their budgets, as we're being asked to do. It may be balanced today, but we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring or what the state is going to do, and I think everywhere we can, it is prudent upon us to do so. And like we said, we didn't do anything last year, and I understand that, but obviously I think we got by okay, and I think we're even worse times today than we were last year at this time.
Which announced through the chair, which reflects the initial $3,800 reduction.
Through the chair.
Councilmember Roy?
I just want to mention that it's not just a few minutes we spent on this. There's many hours of staff time and many hours, actually, of council time that was spent on this budget. So I don't want people to think that we're taking a few $1,000s very lightly here. Having said that, I will make the motion to consider additional reduction of $4,000 affecting appreciation events.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2. I believe that was a no on O'Connell and no on Ibarra. Okay, the next recommendation is recommend budget reduces line item 2008-09 by $10,000. Consider elimination by an additional $5,000 for community-based organizations from the City Council Community Promotion Budget. Discussion or action in council?
Mr. Mayor, this was $15,000 the previous year, and it's been, the proposed budget is $10,000 less, and so now it's at $5,000, and so the proposal is for eliminating the remaining $5,000. Correct?
Correct.
I say for the same reasons, I mean, this, I'm not in favor of this.
Through
So
the
is
chair-
that a motion?
Go ahead. Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we don't reduce item 6502 any further.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
I believe the next thing is mine.
Yes.
In the past, we've had a lot of effort to build a new public library. Unfortunately, both times that we did a bond and the tax increase a couple of years ago, neither of them passed. However, I still believe this community needs a new library, and I would hate to have it not recognized in the budget. So while there's no funding, I believe it should be returned to the capital improvement list. So I move that we do that.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next item, amend capital improvement budget and delete community facilities master plan project.
Through the chair,
Mhm.
I've heard arguments back and forth about both, and I understand the need to plan ahead so that we know what we're doing and why we're doing it for building and different things. Unfortunately, in the past, when we've done very detailed facilities master plans, the projects don't necessarily come to fruition within any kind of timeliness so that the plans are useful. We did a very extensive one on the library in 2001. Here it's 8 years later. I'm sure the plans, while some of it is good, can't be used again. So maybe this could be something that we just hold on to and look at next year and not do it. Again, just not fund it. Just put it in an unfunded year status.
Yeah. Through Chair, I agree. I think this is truly the sign of the times, is that we, it's almost a luxury. It's a cart before the horse issue where we just passed to keep a library that's, you know, a big dream at best right now on the books. And so any other discussion on improving facilities should wait and shouldn't invest any money on any kind of reports or plans. So I'll concur and make a motion that we, what are we going to defer? Defer the project?
Defer funding it. It should be
Defer
listed there
funding of the
because
master-
it's something we need to do, but just defer the funding again.
Move to defer funding of this project, but keep it
Listed.
keep it listed.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The last item was the amend police budget regarding regular salaries. It's recommended the budget reduces line item from 2008-09 by $325,000 by eliminating 3 police officer positions that are currently vacant, freezing, and the recommendation is to consider freezing 1 police officer position with no additional appropriation.
Through the
Councilmember
chair,
Medina?
that's something that I brought up, and I'll, what the councilwoman just said, as far as, I believe this is something that's important, and I think at the staffing level and the public safety with our police is at a point that there is no room for error, and I think this is something that should remain on the radar, and it's important to the citizenry and to the staff that we have adequate policing within our department. So I will ask and make a motion that we, again, as it's written, we go ahead and eliminate the 2 and keep 1 on the books here, but unfunded at this time.
Is there a second?
Yes,
Second.
motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? I only have one concern. We've worked hard to take out of the budget unfunded positions, and I don't believe that this council or any future council is not going to fund a public safety position, be it police or fire, that is brought forward by the department chief or city manager with a recommendation to fund it and to hire, keeping one position there that's not funded is no different than not having it there. It just clouds up the budget process and the job descriptions that we've worked over the past couple of years to clean up and to get rid of. I mean,
Through the chair, I agree.
any further discussion? Okay, on the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Okay, motion fails there. Okay, back to the remaining portion of the budget.
Through the chair. Going on a couple of the items I wanted to touch on, I still think we need to be cost conscious with what is going on and the times that we're in. And if that means even though a budget will be approved at some point, that we still need to be conscientious about what we're spending and what we're doing. For an example, even though it's a beautiful publication of the Water Quality Annual Report, has it gone out to bid lately? Do we need to have that same type of element, even though it's a requirement to meet that level? It's a professional document, but can it be done for less? I think those are things that we still need to continue to look at. In the Public Works reorganization, that has been a concern and a frustration to me, and I've had reservations, and I've taken the opportunity to go and speak to the staff at the Corporation Yard, to our director, to the city manager, to try to better understand and assess from a firsthand at the location why the situation is in the need for what it is. There is a savings to the general fund, there is a savings to the city and enterprise as well. Whether it's at one number or another, there is a general savings. And again, it may not be the perfect solution at this time, but it probably is the best situation that we have for where we stand today. So I'm going to hope that this is monitored closely and that this decision that has been recommended before us, and if we adopt, that it is the right one, and then of course that expectations are laid out, which I don't believe currently have, for what these positions will have and what will be expected of them, and then they will rise to the occasion and meet those for the new titles that would be given if the council approves this. Finally, in public safety, I still, again, have a legitimate concern, and I think everyone does, and I know we all are concerned up here, but I think the staffing level at the police department is still something that I think we cannot forget, we cannot take off the radar. I'm concerned about whether if we come to cross-staffing or brownouts. I know that we're still in bargaining. I know we're not done with the state. So at this time, we'll have to see what brings those items forward. But I am going to say that if needed, I want to and will bring forward amending the budget after some things are resolved in those areas that I've just explained. And I wish and want the chiefs to come forward, especially in the police, if they feel that there is a point that we need to examine this and not try to wait too long in order to achieve what they're trying to do, which is a good effort. But I want to know that the safety and security of this community, its citizens, are number one, and I want it brought forward at any time that there feels a concern for the staffing component.
On the budget, we basically have a balanced budget before us with concessions, predicated on concessions from our labor groups. And could you maybe talk to the council a little bit about exactly where you're at with that and how we proceed if we don't have agreement on those?
Absolutely. As the council's aware, the city's employees are organized in 6 different bargaining units. We have completed over these last several months extensive discussion and have reached agreement with 4 of those 6 bargaining units for a contract extension that includes among other things, the items that we discussed earlier tonight. No increase to compensation and in fact, a reduction to current levels of compensation via a furlough. We have 2 bargaining units remaining with whom we have had either a very short, very limited amount of conversation, or as of this date, not yet any conversation. I am asking the City Council for your consideration to provide no more than 1 month until the end of July for completion of those conversations, to include the program that is incorporated into your budget as it relates to compensation reductions for members of those bargaining units, comparable to those reductions which have been discussed and agreed to with the other bargaining units. At this time, again, I clearly and strongly understand the City Council's direction regards a balanced budget, and I would simply recommend to you that there are no more reasonable options. We would not be here discussing with you reductions to employee compensation if there were an elimination of positions, if there were viable alternatives. At this point, I would have no alternative other than to look to further reduction of staff if I cannot bring you a completed package that includes the agreed to, or that includes agreement to the compensation reduction that I've discussed with you previously.
So on the two remaining bargaining units, what type of time frame do you believe that is reasonable to either achieve or not achieve a resolution so the budget can go into effect? I mean, we could continue to talk for 12 months and then in effect we don't have a balanced budget. So what would seem to be a reasonable period
Correct.
of time to achieve that?
And of course, given how tight this budget is, every day, every week that goes by, that this situation is not resolved, it makes the situation overall worse. My recommendation is that you allow, that you direct that this occur not later than the end of July.
Okay. And so then if 4 units have agreed and 2 don't agree, the portion that would have been saved and the 2 that didn't agree will be reduced costs from those 2 units?
That is my recommendation,
Okay.
yes. I think you're
I think you have an obligation to the employees who have stepped forward, who understand the program, who have worked with staff. Not that the other 2 won't, because I'm sure once you get a chance to talk to them, they probably will as well. But for those that have already committed and made those sacrifices, that they not be penalized because 2 other bargaining units don't, and now they have to burden further reductions within those units. So I think it needs to be kept to those, to each unit.
But we will see to it that that happens.
Any other questions on the budget, or?
Through the chair.
Vice
Just
Mayor Wayne?
nothing else. I'd like to introduce a resolution for adoption with the understanding that the potential budget additions, deletions are included, and the discussion that just occurred with the city manager be part of the resolution.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item, and thank you to the staff for the amount of work you put into it. It's a lot of work. Item B, hold public hearing, waive first reading, introduced by a 2/3 vote of the City Council, an ordinance of the City of San Bruno amending Section 3.32.010 of the San Bruno Municipal Code to increase the transient occupancy tax on rent charged to hotel guests from 10% to 12%. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As the City Manager reported in extensive detail this evening and during previous budget study sessions, the city is facing one of the most difficult economic challenges that it has had to deal with in decades. In response to that, the City Council directed in April, and it was also supported by an employee group that was assembled in order to make recommendations about the budget reductions that we were all facing. The council directed that staff bring forward an ordinance proposing to increase the transient occupancy tax from 10% to 12%. As you know, what the transit occupancy tax, or TOT, is, it's a tax on hotel guests within the city of San Bruno. The amount has not been raised since 1991, when the people voted to increase the amount from 8% to 10%. This amount was reaffirmed in 2001 when a measure was brought to the voters to just confirm the transit occupancy tax in light of Proposition 218. Burlingame, Millbrae, San Mateo are all bringing forward a similar measure to increase the TOT from 10% to 12% in their jurisdictions. As reported by the city manager and the finance director, it is projected that the TOT in the coming year would bring in about $1.3 million. If the city council approves the ordinance before you tonight, and if it is approved by the voters, it is anticipated that it could generate about $270,000 additionally on an annual basis. In order to do that, the first step of the city council would be to enact the ordinance that is before you, which is attached as attachment A to the resolution, which you will find at page 70 in your packet this evening. The second step would be that the voters would need to approve this by a majority vote, and the steps for placing this measure on the ballot and calling for the election will be handled by a separate staff report later this evening. The funds generated by the TOT would be used to preserve general fund services. At this time, does the City Council have any questions for me?
Any questions of staff at this time? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public wanting to address the council regarding the transient occupancy tax?
You're going to increase it by 2%. Okay, 2%, propose to increase the 2%, okay?
Correct.
Well, 2% will drive a lot of the people out of San Bruno and that. Now, how much is it going to cost the city to get this on the ballot? First question I want to know.
We'll see if we can't get you an answer. Any other questions?
No, and I went through a few hotels and stuff in El Camino in the last few days, and they're all hurting bad. That's what they're telling me. The competition is not very good.
Okay. Do you know approximate cost?
It's my understanding that this doesn't make any a real increase in to the city of San Bruno, because there is already an election that will be held.
Okay. Were you able to hear that there's virtually no cost to the city because the city is already holding an election at that time? If you have other questions, I need you to go to the podium. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Okay, this is a public hearing. If the council closes the public hearing, you'll be precluded from speaking on this item.
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Through the
Council
chair,
discussion?
for the city attorney, so you named off a few cities that are going for the same ballot measure. Provided it passes, all the cities say if they all pass, the remaining cities in the county and any other city that would like to increase would still have to go for a vote of the people at whether it's the following November or when?
Yes, and there could be other cities that are moving forward. I simply checked with our closest neighboring jurisdictions, in part to ameliorate the concern that the council might have, as the speaker did, that it would drive business away from San Bruno. In fact, if all the voters of these different cities of our neighboring jurisdictions approve the increase in the transient occupancy tax, we'd all be at the same level, and therefore unlikely that it would drive business away.
Through the chair, and very quick, just in the city of South San Francisco, the TOT may be at a certain percent. However, once you start adding in the others that they have, which is like the convention center and this California, there's tourism, those things also increase. You will hear the TOT is cheaper, but then in the end result, when the other taxes are placed before you, when you are reserving a facility, because we do for our work, then it's way beyond, it's beyond what it says. So also you have to read in between the lines and not just look just at the TOT, but the additional taxes that are placed upon in other cities.
Other questions or discussion? Action, council?
Through Chair, are we going,
We need to-
7 resolutions, or do we take?
No, we need to waive the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to waive the first reading. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Now we
Good.
need the council to introduce the resolution.
Adopt the resolution.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item 9, public comment for items not on the agenda. It's the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Is there anyone wanting to address the city attorney's looking at me like she just saw a deer?
Time out.
Or headlights?
That's what I
Did I
asked.
miss something?
There's
Yes,
7 items
just
here.
a clarification in wording, that what the council just did was to introduce the ordinance increasing the TOT, not adopt the resolution yet, which
No,
deals
it
with the
was-
election
it was-
actions.
That was a roll call on the
Thank you.
ordinance. Okay, they waived the first reading of the ordinance and there's roll call on the ordinance. Okay, public discussion, anyone wanting to address the council on any matter not agendized pursuant to state law? Seeing none, we'll go to item 10, conduct of business. Item A, adopt resolution approving the city's appropriation limit of $29,448,000 for the 2009-10 GAN initiative. Mr. O'Leary?
Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council, the highlight of my year, each year, is my time to come forward before the council and explain the calculations that are made on the GAN limit. The GAN limit...
Is there a presentation?
The GAN limit was actually part of propositions that were approved by the voters in California nearly 30 years ago. And these initiatives were an effort to limit the size of local government by imposing restrictions on the amount of revenue that cities and other governmental entities could use in California. And a base year was established in 1978, and these limits grow from that base year by factors of population change and income change within the jurisdiction or the county, and that is the basis for the calculations that are made. The Finance Department has gone through the calculation and determined that the appropriation limit for San Bruno for the year 2009-10 is $29 million. The actual revenues that the city has to use as part of the budget and what the council adopted tonight is actually 42% below that limit, meaning that the city could have used almost 50% more revenue if we had it at our disposal, which obviously we do not. So the point being that this limit is substantially above what the city has available to spend. And again, just reflecting the lower revenues that we've discussed, last year we were 34% below the limit, and because of lower revenues this year, we've actually increased to like I said, 42% below the limit. So that is the calculation, and again, would not anticipate in the near future number of years that limit would constrain the city council in adopting a budget, or that we would have revenues that would be pushing that limit. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions the council has.
Any questions or action from council?
The chair will introduce the resolution for adoption.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item B, adopt resolution approving master water sales agreement and water supply assurance between the City of San Bruno and the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. Adopt findings for purposes of the California Environmental Quality Act and delegating authority for the city manager to sign the agreement for individual sales with the San Francisco PUC. And just as a matter of clarification on there, the first action that the council is going to have to take is to adopt the findings and then approve the master water sales agreement if they're so inclined, and then third is authorizing the city manager. So, Harp?
Mayor, council members, back in 2006, the city council authorized BASCA to negotiate on our behalf a water service agreement with the city and the county of San Francisco. Since then, between 2006 and today, the city manager, Connie Jackson, coordinated with BASCA the ongoing negotiation, supported by the Public Service Department, and Connie represented the city interest during this negotiation. I will present our Jensen, who is the Chief Executive Officer and the General Manager for BASCA, to give you a brief update on the master contract and also the CICWA and the individual water contract.
Thank you. Mr.
Welcome,
Mayor,
Art.
members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Let me get set up here first. Thank you. One second. Do you know which one? Yes. Is it this one? Great. Again, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. This presentation will take us through the purpose of the agreement, the background, the major provisions, the schedule for action. I can give you an update on how many agencies have approved the agreement so far this evening, as of this evening at least. Basics first. The purpose of the agreement is to ensure that the citizens of San Bruno have a reliable supply of high-quality water at a fair price. And because you have multiple sources of water, I want to clarify at the outset for you and the public, this is only dealing with the water you purchase from San Francisco. This agreement has no impact at all on your use of groundwater underlying the city of San Bruno. You currently have two contracts with San Francisco. The existing master contract, which is about to expire, contains all of the provisions that are common to all of the agencies that buy water from San Francisco, including the new agreement will include the services that San Francisco is to provide, which is far embellished over the existing contract, and the costs that you have to pay. It determines what costs they are able to charge you and then allocates those costs between all of the wholesale customers and the customers within the city and county of San Francisco itself. The second agreement that you have is an individual water sales contract, and that is in your packet as well. And that contains the information relevant to your relationship with San Francisco that is unique to the city of San Bruno. In terms of the agencies that are a party to the existing contract, it's 27 agencies outside San Francisco. They are all potential signatories of the new contract, and I'll give you the end of the story right now. If you approve these agreements this evening, you will be number 24 of 27. So 23 of the agencies have approved as of last night. As Clara said, you did authorize us to negotiate on your behalf in August of 2006, as did all of the other BOSCA members, and that authorization included specific objectives which we had hoped to achieve on your behalf. I would like to say at the beginning that we met or exceeded all of those original expectations. That is not to say that we got everything we wanted, however, and I'll clarify what we did and did not get in a few moments. The agreement does articulate what services San Francisco is to provide. It does that in far more detail than the existing contract. It protects your financial interests and obviously those of your customers. It has a term of 25 years. And one of the things that we did not bargain for was a limitation on the water that is available to the agencies. And I have a slide which describes that in more detail toward the end. In terms of the things that we did achieve, this list, the next list of 10 items are the objectives that were in the documents that you reviewed 3 years ago when you authorized us to negotiate. The first was that San Francisco complete rebuilding the system, all the seismic upgrades, the $4.4 billion of improvements they're making by 2015. That is in the agreement. They've agreed to that. Next, that they'll maintain the system. It's much more robust maintenance clause in this agreement than in the current agreement. One of the reasons for that is that we're good negotiators. The other reason is that you strongly want them to properly maintain the $4.4 billion worth of facilities that they're building at this time. No point in having a 25-year contract with facilities that deteriorate during the period of the contract. The next, and I'll only go through a few of these, the delivery of water equitably in the event of a major disaster. In other words, if there is an earthquake, it was important that San Francisco not operate this regional system so that all of the water goes to San Francisco and none of it gets to you. That is a matter of state law at the present time, but that law is going to expire in a few years. This puts it in your contract for the next 25 years, and that's a very valuable protection. And it's also a protection to San Francisco. If they're not selling you water, they can't collect your money. So it's good for everyone. I'm going to skip on to the water quality provisions. Your current contract has no water quality provisions. This contract says they have to serve you water that meets state and federal standards. This is important for a number of reasons. One of the important reasons is that the state has given the city of San Bruno a permit for its water system. And as one of your approved sources of drinking water, it cites the San Francisco system. So certainly San Francisco should commit in a contract to provide you water that will satisfy the permit the state's given you. The second reason that this is important is that you're paying for all the treatment plants, the treatment chemicals, the personnel, and so forth, all the sampling, monitoring, and so on, to ensure that the water is safe. So again, it's reasonable for this to be in the contract, and it now is. Finally, with respect to these original objectives, charging you a fair price, the contract does not set the rates. It sets how much money San Francisco is entitled to collect from all the wholesale customers each year. And that is a distinction. So it limits how much money they can collect from all of you, but if they wish to adopt a rate structure that charges some agencies a different rate than others because of the way they use water, their patterns of use, and so on, they are free to do that at some future time. Currently, they've adopted rates that mirror those of the past. All the agencies pay the same amount for a given amount of water. One of the things this contract does do, though, is it retains the best of the existing contract that you have. It's lasted for 25 years, and it was designed to protect your interests. It was a contract that was born out of a lawsuit about water rates, and it's done an excellent job of protecting your interests and making sure that we can tell that you're only paying a fair amount for the water that you buy. All of those provisions are retained in the new contract. If anything, they're made more efficient, simpler, and better for you. The crux of the fair price, excuse me, is that you only pay for actual costs and you only pay for services and facilities that benefit you. You don't pay for things that don't benefit you, and you don't pay just on budgeted amounts. The rates are set on budgeted amounts. At the end of the year, there's a true up and you only end up paying for actuals. Finally, another objective that the agencies had going in was that they wanted to mitigate the high fluctuations in the wholesale cost of water from San Francisco, and we were able to achieve that as well. In addition, the existing contract created a supply assurance. It lasts in perpetuity. It's the only provision that survives the termination of the existing contract. That obviously is retained. In terms of drought, this contract includes a provision that allocates water between San Francisco's retail customers and the wholesale customers in the event of a drought. And then finally, two other new provisions. One is that if San Francisco wants to develop a water project to increase the supply assurance, the amount of water available to your city or the other cities, they have to do so jointly with BOSCA. It has to be by a separate agreement with BOSCA. Why is that important, and why is that in here, and why is it to your benefit? It's to your benefit because without that, San Francisco could build a new water supply. They don't need new water. They could charge you 100% of the cost, and you would have no say over whether they did it, how they did it, and what the cost was. That's called a blank check. Not a good idea. The contract now says if they're going to develop new supply to increase the supply assurance, they do so in conjunction with BOSCA. You have a member on the BOSCA board. You get to vote on that matter. The next item is slightly different. It says if they want to develop a new supply to substitute for existing supplies, their existing supplies, they can do so, but they've got to share information, provide you the opportunity to go and testify and so forth. Why is this different than the one before? And why does this exist at all? It exists because when San Francisco was going through the environmental work for their $4.4 billion program, there were commissioners and officials in San Francisco that said, you know, we should develop a new supply to not use so much Tuolumne River water. Preserve that for the environment. That is a completely legitimate public policy issue. It's not joined in the agreement. That is a decision for a future date. But if they do that, if they develop a new supply to substitute for an existing supply, you should be able to testify. You should get the reports that are the basis of their decision, and you will. They are free to go ahead and do so, make the decision to do that if they wish. But there's a big difference between this item and the one before it. And that is that under number 4, if they develop a substitute supply, they're going to pay a proportionate share of the cost. They can't bill it all to you. They have a dog in that fight. Their customers will be impacted. And so there is sort of a common sense of responsibility that they would share that you would benefit from. Now, San Francisco did something last October which we did not count on, and which has a potentially serious impact to all of you. What they decided to do unilaterally, it was their decision to make, was to limit how much water they would sell you, at least until 2018. They will make a decision in 2018 as to whether or not they sell you more. They took this action for a very specific strategic purpose. They had a program EIR in front of the Planning Commission in San Francisco. That EIR needed to be approved. It needed to go forward without being contested if they were to keep the seismic rebuilding program on schedule. That's important for everybody. We don't know when the earthquake's going to occur, and we want them to complete that program. So what they elected to do in the face of a lot of opposition about taking more water from the Tuolumne River was to limit how much water they would provide to you. The consequences are that unlike all of the planning that had been done as part of that PEIR, they will not be meeting your projected needs through the year 2030. In addition, they've elected that they would enforce this limitation with an environmental surcharge. In other words, if agencies use more than some particular amount, you would pay more for the water you use above that limitation. Finally, another consequence is because they're not following all of the planning that was done to the year 2030, San Jose and Santa Clara, who are temporary customers, unlike San Bruno, which is a permanent customer, they're temporary customers, and their water supply from San Francisco could be reduced or cut off. These are serious consequences, and we're hoping to avoid all of them. With respect to what the agreement provides, if you approve this agreement tonight, the agreement, first of all, that the supply limitation does not affect your perpetual contractual right to a certain amount of water. That is unaffected by this. Secondly, the agreement has that the limitation also applies to San Francisco. With respect to the environmental surcharge in the same amount would apply to San Francisco as it would apply to San Bruno or any of the other agencies. Now, the limitations above which San Bruno might have to pay this environmental surcharge has not yet been set. It will be set by San Francisco before the end of December of 2010. And finally, with respect to the agreement that you're considering this evening, it does not say that you agree to this limitation, that you agree to the surcharge or the limit above which it would be imposed. So, as a matter of fact, it retains your right to contest the limitation, and that's important. So what we did do in the face of San Francisco's unilateral decision was to ensure that you would be treated fairly and on par with the customers in San Francisco, and that this process would be managed, but we also preserved your ability to contest it. Lastly, with respect to the major provisions, there was a significant change with respect to how you repay San Francisco for their capital improvements in the regional water system. You still only pay costs, but you pay at a different time. The timing has changed significantly, And I doubt that you're interested in all the details. I could go on at length regarding this, but let me just say that it saves you money. The rate increases you're going to experience over the next few years are not because of the agreement, they're because of this rebuilding project. They will be virtually identical to what they would have been under the old agreement. It saves you a lot of money over what San Francisco would have agreed to otherwise. It shortens the period of time over which you repay your obligation to San Francisco, so you're not saddling future generations with debt. And we heard last week after San Francisco met with the bond buyers that this last statement was not just a speculation, but is actually true. It improves the bond buyer outlook. In other words, we will all pay less for the bonds that are required to rebuild the system. I'll close with this slide. San Francisco approved the agreement on April 28th. 23 agencies have approved it. You would be the 24th if you did so this evening. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions you might have.
Any questions from council?
Through the chair, just curiosity, I think you explained it in the supply assurance. Because of the drought, there's been some articles bandied around the state and some enlightenment on how water rates have skyrocketed in some areas and how private enterprise has purchased water rights and water, mostly in the Imperial Valley and in the valley. Bosca eliminates any chance of private enterprise in purchasing water and and selling it wholesale at a higher price or something?
Yes, the article you're referring to was about the Kern County Water Bank, and this agreement has nothing to do with that or anything like it. So.
No chance of something of that nature?
Not as long as you've got a representation on our board, no.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Action, council.
Well, before we actually, I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Art Jensen has been fabulous doing this. It's one of those things that you see the end result. It's a 10-minute presentation, but he's been working on this for months and months and over a year, 2 years, 3 years.
3 years.
I know it was a long time. I forgot. Time goes fast. So it's been an extreme challenge. San Francisco's leadership has changed. The focus has changed. The world has changed in those 3 years, but he and his team did a fabulous job getting this agreement to us. So with that, I'd like to introduce a resolution to adopt the water master plan agreement.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Excuse me,
Excuse
oops,
me.
before you start,
one
could we
minute.
make sure you're,
Yeah,
Are we doing the,
first,
did I do it right?
we have to have a motion first to adopt the findings for the purposes of California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and secondly, we need the resolution.
So I'd like us to adopt the resolution
Roll call.
or introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane?
Aye.
Mayor Franzella?
Aye. And the third item we need is a motion to delegate authority for the city manager to sign the agreement for individual sales with SFPUC.
And
Motion.
make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Art, thanks for a great job. Always a pleasure to see you here. Item C, adopt resolution amending cable television services and rates effective August 1st, 2009. Mr. Galson.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, good evening. The City Council annually reviews cable television services and rates and considers staff's recommendation for service enhancements and rate adjustments. Normally, this process has taken place during the City Council's first meeting in May, ensuring the approved changes are implemented at the beginning of the fiscal year in July. However, this process was postponed to the second meeting in June due to challenges experienced in setting an appropriate rate increase amount in the face of steep license fee rate increases from programmers like Comcast, Sportsnet, and the general sentiment of the community to rate increases in these constrained economic times. After having met with the City Council Ad Hoc Cable Television Subcommittee on 3 separate occasions to discuss broadcast retransmission consent and cable program and negotiations, service enhancements, the rate increase amount, and new business development opportunities, staff, as directed by this cable subcommittee, is proposing a rate increase of 8.5% or $4.14 on basic cable services, among a few other changes for fiscal year 2009-10. In comparison to other cable operators, this rate increase of 8.5% or $4.14 on basic service is a penny or two lower than the rate implemented by Comcast and 53 cents more than the rate increase implemented by Astound, as shown in the rate comparisons worksheet attached to your staff report. This comparable amount of rate increase enabled San Bruno Cable to, 1, recover about half of its programming costs, 2, hopefully convey to our customers that the city is cognizant of their sensitivity to price increases in these tough economic times, and 3, enables the city to maintain its value-oriented pricing strategy. Although Comcast is not a cable service provider in San Bruno, the company surely is exacting a penalty on San Bruno Cable customers through their programming arm. Without belaboring this point, the Comcast has split the content of Comcast Sportsnet California, the Bay Area channel, channel 40 on the lineup, into 2 separate channels. They moved the coverage of the Oakland A's and the San Jose Sharks to a new channel they're calling Comcast Sportsnet California. This unilateral change in programming was also accompanied by a steep rate increase of 133%. This increase in cost would need to be absorbed to maintain the same level of programming customers are accustomed to receiving from San Bruno Cable. Other programming costs are also increasing at an average rate of 7.5%. The Cable Subcommittee expressed deep concern over the impact the protracted negotiations with Comcast is having on customers and directed staff to launch the Comcast Sportsnet California channel as quickly as possible. This process is in progress, and staff hopes to have the channel up within the next month. Additionally, to offer customers some rate relief, San Bruno Cable proposes a new basic level of internet service comprised of 1.5 megabits per second downstream and 256 kilobits per second upstream speeds, with a bandwidth consumption limit of 25 gigabits priced at a $19.95 point. And a new basic phone service comprised of local and domestic long-distance calling only for $29.95. These services will be offered as a la carte services. The bundled packages will continue to contain the standard internet service offerings, offering customers the best service and the greatest discount. There are 20 broadcast stations in the Bay Area. Out of the 20 stations, 10 or half of the stations have elected must-carry status, meaning every video service provider must carry the station on their lineup. And the remaining half have elected retransmission consent, meaning every video service provider must negotiate consent to carry those stations. The broadcaster's election is good for 3 years. This current election period began January 1 of 2009 and will end December 31st of 2011. So far, San Bruno Cable has successfully negotiated with 7 out of the 10 stations that have elected retransmission consent. In some cases, San Bruno Cable offered to provide advertising on cable channels as compensation, and in other cases, San Bruno Cable has agreed to carry a new cable channel, network channel owned by the broadcaster. But San Bruno Cable is yet to agree to any direct cash payment for the rights to retransmit the broadcast signal. As you are aware, the negotiations with Coffee reached impasse late last year, and the station ordered San Bruno Cable to drop the channel. The negotiations with Univision Communications for the remaining 2 broadcast stations, Univision, which is KDTV Channel 14, and Telefutura KFSF 66, unfortunately also reached impasse on July 12th. And the broadcaster has ordered San Bruno Cable to drop the stations effective midnight, June 26th. I meant June 12th. And June 26th is when the stations will be dropped. San Bruno Cable at this time proposes to comply with the station's order as required by law. These negotiations are proving to be very difficult as San Bruno Cable continues to do its best in minimizing cost increases and maintaining City Council direction to offer value-oriented services. Impacted customers will continue to have access to Telemundo on Channel 17 for local news in Spanish. And San Bruno Cable proposes to offer affected customers with 6 months free trial of the Canales Pack. At the City Council budget study session held last Tuesday evening, the City Council had expressed an interest in learning how San Bruno Cable's service rates compare to the service rates of DirecTV and Dish Network, as they're truly San Bruno Cable's direct competitor. Although it was challenging to make a direct comparison, as an effort was made to do just that. A worksheet comparing San Bruno Cable to DirecTV and Dish Network is provided in the information packet provided to you earlier this evening, containing staff's response to questions the City Council had raised during last Tuesday's budget study session meeting. For this comparison, San Bruno Cable services were compared to the most comparable satellite package. The monthly prices in the comparison worksheets are the non-promotional standard prices of the package paid by existing customers and are not inclusive of taxes and fees. I'm sure you'll be pleased to see that San Bruno Cable's prices are not that out of whack with the competitor, with the competition. In comparison, when you see a significant disparity in the number of channels, staff discovered that the satellite companies were offering both the eastern and western feeds of the same channel, essentially skewing or doubling the count, but offering nothing more in terms of new content. Also, where San Bruno Cable offers only 2 home shopping channels, Home Shopping Network and QVC, the satellite companies are offering 20 or more home shopping network channels. You may agree with me that that offering 20 home shopping channels may be overarching to some extent. So as you examine this, I would like to take the opportunity to point out that San Bruno Cable additionally offers access to video on demand service, including some 1,000 hours of free content to all cable customers. Satellite companies are still trying to come up with a solution for that. San Bruno Cable customers are also able to enjoy an additional 20% discount on double and triple play packages when they subscribe to high-speed internet and digital phone services. These discounted rates are not subject to long-term commitment requirements, as in the case of satellite service, and customers are free to upgrade and downgrade their service anytime without penalty. And lastly, San Bruno Cable is a local operation offering same-day or next-day service, and there's no need to ship defective equipment off to repair. So besides the rates, staying with San Bruno Cable offers many additional benefits. Lastly, at the direction of the Cable Subcommittee, San Bruno Cable is exploring new business opportunities to more broadly spread the department's operating costs so that the value pricing strategy can be maintained. Staff will be returning to the City Council with a presentation on such opportunities next month. In closing, staff recommends City Council adoption of the proposed services and rate change for fiscal year 2009-10. I'll take any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions from
Through the chair.
Councilman Rivera?
So even though Comcast owns Comcast Sports Network, and this major increase, there's still Comcast customers are still footing the bill for that service also.
That's right.
And then every other non-Comcast provider has to pay similar types of rates.
Similar types, and if you look at Comcast rates, they're charging obviously 20% more than we are. So they're easily able to absorb those kind of costs.
Any idea how much savings in dropping those 3 channels that you mentioned, KOFY, just to give people an idea of
dropping the 3 broadcast channels?
Yeah.
Essentially, we don't charge for those channels.
Okay.
What the broadcasters are trying to do now is exact a fee for those channels, and what we have been doing is actually fighting that, so that we don't have to pass a rate increase on to customers. So that's really what that is all about. It's not the limited basic fee that we charge is really to bring the services to customers. It's not really a programming fee per se, because San Bruno Cable had to construct a large amount of physical plant in order to do that. So that's really what the limited basic service fee is. It's not really a programming fee.
So just for the resident, out of the rates that we're paying, how much are we paying for those Comcast channels?
In aggregate, out of our programming costs, almost $750,000 or so goes to Comcast annually.
But out of
Oh, how much is on there?
the $50 plus,
I'd say Comcast represents more than 10% or more than 10%, yeah.
and that's mainly for the broadcasts of right now of Oakland A's and San Jose
That's right.
Sharks.
So it'll be more than 10% when we carry both of them. Right now it's about 10%. It's going to be more than 10% when we do both together. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions from council?
Through the chair, very quickly.
Councilor Revere?
After study session asking for this, I appreciate that. I know you were telling me it was apples and oranges, but I think somehow we can get to the apples and apples.
We'll
And
try
I
to do
think
it.
that this is what needs to be continued on when we have comparisons in the future.
Sure, you
So
got
that
it.
they're always included. I think AT&T is another provider that we should look at. Again, if you don't keep your eye on what your competition is doing, then you get left behind. So I think in the future, when these reports come out, they should all be compared as best as you can get.
We'll do it.
Other questions from council members? Action from council?
Sure, the chair will introduce the resolution for adoption.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Pranzella.
Aye. Item D, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Bruno calling for a number of things. The first is calling for the holding of the general municipal election to be held Tuesday, November 3rd, 2009, for the election of certain officers as required by the provisions of the laws of the state of California relating to general law cities. Second, ordering the submission to the voters of a question relating to increasing the city's transient occupancy tax to hotel guests to 12%. Third, providing city clerk direction regarding election and measure setting priorities for filing written arguments regarding a city measure and directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis. Fourth, requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Mateo to render specified services to the city relating to the conduct of a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2009, requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Mateo to consolidate a general municipal election to be held on November 3rd, 2009, with other elections to be held on the same date pursuant to Section 10403 of the Elections Code, adopting regulations for candidates for elective offices pertaining to candidate statements submitted to the voters at an election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2009, and lastly, providing for given notice of the election. City Attorney?
Well, Mr. Mayor, having read the title of that, I'm not sure that there is much that I need to add to my report. So I will say just this. Having earlier this evening introduced the ordinance that we would bring to the voters that would increase the transit occupancy tax. In order to get that to the voters, there are a number of election activities that the City Council needs to approve through this resolution. You've gone through that list, and in short, it is calling for the election. It is placing a particular question regarding the measure on the ballot. So you'll want to look at the wording of that, which is on page 62, to make sure that that comports with your desires. The wording for that is to preserve funding for general city services. Shall the City of San Bruno approve an ordinance amending the San Bruno Municipal Code to increase the transit occupancy tax rate from 10% to 12% on the rent charge to hotel guests within the city, and then voters would be able to answer yes or no to that. In addition to declaring the election and putting the measure before the voters, the City Council has some other actions to take. One is that the City Council could authorize its membership to write arguments either for or against the measure, and so that would need to be clearly articulated this evening whether you wish to do that. The second would be whether to authorize rebuttal arguments, which typically the City Council has authorized, and also whether to authorize me as City Attorney to prepare an impartial analysis of the measure. In addition, you would be directing the City Clerk to work with the county officials to consolidate the election and allow them to provide election services. There are also some regulations that are enacted through the resolution relating to the preparation of the candidate statements, and finally directing the City Clerk to publish these notices. The City Clerk has worked with me carefully on these resolutions, and in addition, she wanted to make sure that the voters are aware of exactly which offices are up for election this November.
In this upcoming election, we will have a mayoral seat, 2 council members, 1 city treasurer, and 1 city clerk. The filing period for these offices will begin on July 13th and close on August 7th. And there will be packets in my office available on July 13th. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of the clerk? Okay. On the items before us regarding the ballot arguments and proposed arguments, what's the council's pleasure?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm hearing an indication from one council member. But do you need that as an actual motion or just?
No, and it's the, as I understand it, would be authorizing the council as a whole to do arguments in
favor.
And then the rebuttal arguments, do you authorize rebuttal arguments in this,
Yes.
regarding this measure? And then do you authorize me as city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
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 Okay.
It's covered in the
All right.
third bullet point.
On the resolution, is there action from council to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce the resolution for adoption.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item E, adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application to the Federal Department of Energy to receive $159,700 from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program funded by the Federal American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. And Mr. Shannon.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here to discuss the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. And this relatively new program came about because of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, commonly referred to as the federal stimulus package. And it authorizes the Department of Energy to award $3.2 billion worth of funding to promote the reduction of fossil fuel emissions, to reduce greenhouse gases, to promote energy efficiency and conservation, to states, municipalities, and tribes. Cities get an allocation. Cities over 35,000 in population get an allocation from the DOE. States just have to go in and get it and say what they're going to use that money for. The projects, not only should they reduce fossil fuel emissions, but should be sort of something that has a regional or local impact and that can help stimulate the economy. San Bruno is selected to receive $160,000. While that is certainly money we didn't have before, that's not a lot of money to build things. And so when staff was looking at piecing together the programs that would work for this amount of money, we wanted to think of this as maybe seed money or ways to leverage additional projects or funds in the future. And so those that we walk through are 4 pieces that we think would accomplish that. There's a variety of eligible activities that attachment 2 in the staff report talks, I think, about 14 different items. So essentially the Department of Energy just wants to give sort of broad discretion to cities to make meaningful impacts on energy conservation. So the first program that we have proposed here is a climate action plan for $40,000. This would cover some staff time as well as some minor technical assistance. This is a strategic and tactical document designed to reduce or address greenhouse gas emissions from both city operations and from the community at large. The city has been involved in a couple of efforts to measure the amount of greenhouse gases we produce as a city operation, as well as what our surrounding community emits. And so now that we've almost finished collecting that data, we use that to say, okay, how are we going to reduce from those levels? This is the climate action plan is the means to do that. This is also called out in the newly adopted general plan that was that council just approved. Second program requires maybe a little more explaining. This is energy audits and retrofits for residential buildings, and this is for $80,000, or about half of our allocation. So the mantra here is reduce before you produce. For dollar invested versus amount of energy saved, you get the biggest bang for your buck when you look into energy efficiency and conservation before you make that move to maybe putting in solar panels or putting in wind turbines. So the idea here is to increase that concept and promote it countywide. So San Bruno is collaborating with 17 other cities so far in San Mateo County, as well as the county itself, to come up with a program that does several things, which is to increase educational awareness of energy efficiency. That's the one. So that's the reduce before you produce mantra. Increase the quality and quantity of the energy efficiency workforce. There's a relatively few number of contractors that are really qualified to do home energy audits and home energy improvements specifically aimed at increasing energy efficiency. So we want to increase that workforce. But we also want to build something. We do want to use the money to actually make some improvements. So we want to subsidize some energy audits and energy efficiency improvements to residential buildings, both multifamily and single family. There's a bullet here that notes that this would fill some gaps in some existing programs. There are some programs similar to providing subsidies for audits and retrofits for low income, very low income homeowners. A little more up the income ladder, and you're sort of on your own. PG&E does provide a very comprehensive website to sort of do it yourself, but you have to have a pretty sophisticated knowledge of what you're getting into, and no one comes out to your home to really help you make those evaluations. So this project, once sort of fully fleshed out, San Bruno resident could apply to the program. There'd be some sort of sliding scale depending on income level, and we could have somebody go out there and do an energy audit, and from that energy audit see what improvements need to be made, whether it's just swapping out some fluorescent light bulbs or weather stripping, or whether we need some insulation or energy efficient appliances. So that's sort of the goal of the program, but it is in its early stages. So over the next few months, staff anticipates a discussion with the county and other cities to really coalesce, and we'll be reporting back to council on how this is developing, because the idea is to not duplicate effort with other cities. You know, we're a small jurisdiction. We want to make sure everything is shared in terms of costs throughout the county, but the benefits do come back to San Bruno. This will also establish a model for other cooperative agreements countywide that could maybe look into the future of maybe subsidizing or allowing a financing mechanism for the placement of solar panels or some other renewable energy devices. I think we want to get there. I think this is the step to get there. So that was a little bit long-winded for that program. The next program, Renewable Energy Study for Utility Facilities. This is quite a bit less for $20,000. This actually is a project in our capital improvement program, and this would evaluate existing utility structures for our wastewater, water, and cable operations to see what improvements could be made to increase energy efficiency or use those facilities to hold such things as solar panels or small-scale wind turbines. Any of the recommendations from the report will be incorporated into the future modifications of those sites, and as council knows, a lot of these sites are old and in need of repair, so these recommendations will be put to good use in the relatively near future. So maybe $20,000 from the conservation block grant, and then $20,000 from the enterprise funds to make that happen for a grand total of $40,000. Lastly, the last program is an LED pilot project for just about $20,000. Most of it would go toward purchasing LED lights. We've gone through most of our traffic signals and put in LED lights, but we want to try to identify which types of LED lights should go into our street lights. We do have a street light replacement program in our capital budget, and but we need to evaluate which types of new LED lights that are coming on the market are going to work best in terms of cost, lifetime, power consumption, the quality of light that they produce. So we want to evaluate all those things over the 3-year time span of this grant. There's some reporting requirements that are part of AV grant. That's part of the federal stimulus package. We're going to be reporting on the number of jobs created or retained, the amount of energy saved per dollar invested, renewable energy capacity installed, greenhouse gases emissions reduced, and any funds leveraged for future projects. The council action requested is to authorize the city manager to apply for these funds to formally, even though we have an allocation, we do have to go and ask for them, and we would very much like any comments you have back on those 4 programs that we outlined.
Comments from council or questions? Action on the item?
Through the chair.
Councilwoman O'Connell?
I'm very excited that we've included not just planning, but some actual programs and improvements that'll be made. And I would like to introduce the resolution.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item F, adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute consultant services agreement with DKS Associates for traffic engineering and design services in an amount not to exceed $75,000. And Ms. Fabre.
Mayor, council members, the reason for this action and the reason for the need to enter in this consultant agreement with this traffic consultant is for our department to have timely, available, professional engineering support for minor project design and traffic studies. Also, our department needs some enhanced design capability and resources. Our existing resources are very limited, and in order for us to be able to meet your expectation set through our capital improvement plan, the department need some outside support, and also needs certain depth of experience implementing certain projects more than anything else in the area of traffic calming design, in which area our department has limited experience. The possible type of project where this traffic consultant will support our department or the San Anselmo traffic circles, the Crystal Spring and Donner intersection, the Fleetwood Drive traffic calming. All of these projects are already included in our proposed 09-010 CIP budget. Also, this traffic consultant will help and support us to develop parking restriction guidelines and policies. The intent behind the development of these parking guidelines and policies is to minimize the resources needed to address those emerging issues. If you will consider how many times our department came to you in the last 2 years asking your decision on certain red parking or sometime very minor request which really required a very extensive time allocation from our department going through the public safety committee and then taking those items for your consideration is a very extensive burden on our own resources. Developing this kind of general guidelines and policies would minimize the need and the investment of our own resources, would provide set guidelines and policies in which framework could be used by the department to make certain administrative decision and to pre-select those issues which will need to be taken to the Traffic Safety Committee and also for your consideration. With those recommendations, it's our intent to ask the Traffic Safety Committee approval and also to take for your final approval and consideration. Also, the traffic calming toolkit would develop certain, exactly what it said, a toolkit, certain type of traffic calming designs, and would be easier for our department and for you to make some choices, already having some, like a menu type of solution, and would be easier for us to make those decisions and make recommendations for your consideration. Our department went through a very extensive selection process to make this selection. Was a RFP released back in February of this year. The RFP was posted on the city website. Also, the RFP was mailed to many consultants. 6 of the consultant respondents, they were interviewed, and based on our interview, DKS was selected. This contract is set up as a task order agreement. That really mean that the department each time will ask the consultant to perform a certain task. Based on that return request, they will make a proposed price proposal, and then will be agreement reached between us, and then the consultant can proceed. The total cost for this contract will be up to $75,000. The needed funding is already included in our already approved budget in our CIP budget under those already listed CIP projects. If you have any question.
Any questions of staff?
Through the chair.
Councilmember Medina?
Looking at the areas that you went over, San Antonio Avenue, stop sign at Crystal Springs, et cetera, one that I think, unless I'm not seeing it, is the one at DeSoto that's been ongoing and some time ago approved. Santa Lucia, thank you.
Council members, why that project is not listed here, the department already have the 100% design for that project, and is our next step to take that final design for the subcommittee consideration and to implement the project.
And that's coming back to the council for review for the...
Our intent was to take only just to the subcommittee for the final design, and then basically to go out for bid for the project.
I would think that should come back to the entire council. The
there
council
was a
had a
lot of
little
concern.
consternation with the original design.
I couldn't come up with a better word. Wow. That's impressive. Wow.
That's certainly,
thrilled.
the department had already have 100% design, then will be our next step to take back for your consideration.
No, I think the DeSoto one, San Lucia, went around and around enough that I think,
Okay.
just so everyone's happy, I think it should come back, but I appreciate that clarification. Also, since some of these projects have not come to conclusion or fruition, are the residents that were interested in these areas, have they been given any update to know that we're still here? We still care, and we're still working on it? I mean, there was a subcommittee that was supposed to meet over on the Donner one months ago. I mean, has anyone notified them that, you know, our situation and what's progressing?
Our intent was, if you will approve this contract tonight, the development of this project are in a very aggressive short-term schedule, and certainly they will be right away contacted and engaged and involved in the progress of those projects.
In addition to that, we can let people know right away what the status is, that it's either immediate or whatever that schedule
I think some
is.
people have been extremely patient through the process,
we
and I
agree.
think we deserve and owe them the respect of updating them.
We will do that.
Certainly.
Through the chair?
Councilman Ibarra?
For the same 5 projects, are those the priority, that these assignments, task order assignments, will be placed before the consultant?
Correct.
Okay.
In the listed order, that's how was our agreed on priority, and they will proceed in that sequence.
So city staff, for example, we have an item that's that's right after this one. City staff will still handle the ongoing traffic safety issues and any other issues that come forward to the Traffic Safety Parking Committee.
Correct.
Okay. And the DKS would not be handling any, they'll just be dealing with the design. They won't be taking care of the, dealing with the public on, as far as traffic calming issues?
Correct.
We might, at the director's initiative, if we felt it was desirable to include the
Yeah.
representative in a meeting, say with the Donner
Yeah.
area residents, for the purpose of expediting the discussion, we might do that, but otherwise,
I'm just getting at that we won't have, that a consultant will be handling,
No.
a project on their own now.
Not independently of staff,
Okay.
no.
And the city manager is absolutely correct. If the department will need, she's always correct by definition, of course. I am sorry.
She doesn't hear that a lot, so she probably appreciates that.
Just reaffirming again that she's right.
If the department will need at
Let's
those
talk about
public
that.
meetings some expertise or some special technical support, that yes, the department will request that support.
Any other questions or action from council?
I'll introduce resolution for adoption.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item G, adopt resolution approving new red curb, no parking zones to accommodate the turning movements of emergency fire vehicles at the intersections of Huntington Avenue East with Scott Street and with South Bayshore Circle, and the intersections of North Bayshore Circle with Atlantic Avenue, and the intersection of Huntington Avenue East with Pacific Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm before you tonight to recommend an action to implement some new parking restrictions in the neighborhood that was described. So we're talking about the neighborhood east of Huntington, bounded basically by Tanforan and 380. So in that neighborhood, we have a siding road next to Huntington called Huntington Avenue East. It's only 19 feet wide. And as part of the proactive evaluation of the safety of our community, the fire department has looked at that neighborhood and said, really, they have constrained conditions there to be able to maneuver their fire safety vehicles. And so they came to engineering and requested that we evaluate whether it would be appropriate to adopt some new parking restrictions. So the specific request that they brought forward was to limit parking for the first 20 feet from each side of the returns at 4 intersections. And so what staff did is we evaluated that. We used turning templates, design tools, and what we confirmed is that, in fact, based upon the size of the fire vehicles that we have, that we really should be restricting parking probably for between 40 or 60 feet. So in consultation with fire, they really believe that balancing the needs in the community to really try and preserve parking, that they'd like to start with removing 20 feet. And so that is the recommendation that we're carrying forward. The matter was sent before the TSPC at their May meeting. We noticed the neighborhood. We had 5 members of the public that showed up, 2 members that spoke. One member really acknowledged that they've seen difficulty with garbage trucks making the turns and really believe that this is an appropriate action to take. There was another member of the public who was concerned about the loss of parking in their neighborhood, and so I committed to work with South San Francisco to look at expanding parking on Tanforan Avenue. I've since contacted the city of South San Francisco, and I'm in conversations to see what we can do to increase the available on-street parking in that neighborhood. So the specific 4 intersection we're talking about, the first at the southern end is Huntington, East, and Scott Street. And so here's a depiction of what 20 feet of red curb would look like. We're talking about 14 specific locations, but because of locations of existing driveways and some existing fire hydrants, we're talking about the reduction of 9 parking spaces by implementing these recommended changes. The next location is at Huntington and South Bayshore. The third is at North Bayshore and Atlantic. And then lastly at Huntington and Pacific. So for those 4 locations, recommending removing 20 feet of parking. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from council? Action from council?
Through the chair, it's just a shame that whole neighborhood was designed with such narrow streets and everything, but I think this will help. I'll introduce the resolution.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item H, adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Rockaway Construction Incorporated for Fire Station 51 accessibility and privacy upgrades project in the amount of $153,690 and approving a construction budget in the amount of $176,743. Shannon.
We had one female.
Good evening once
firefighter.
again, Mayor and Council. We're here to talk about a remodel of Station 51 with regards to accessibility and privacy upgrades and gender separation. Briefly, Fire Station 51 was constructed, we believe, in 1957, so it's over 50 years old. We've had minimal improvements to this station over the years, even though it does hold 8 firefighters, including 1 battalion chief, 2 captains, and then 5 firefighters. So the project itself will be, the bulk of the project is to redesign the existing dormitories and bathrooms. But before we took that step, we wanted to make sure there wasn't any really significant and pressing seismic deficiencies in the building, given its age, that would prohibit us from moving forward with the remodel. So in last year's CIP program, we did have a seismic study for Fire Station 51 that was completed fall of last year. The building is structurally sound. However, if a large earthquake were to occur, a quite large one located very nearby, we would need some improvements to withstand a quake of that magnitude. So the renovation for that sort of improvement was about $1.3 million. That's more money than we have. And that's good to know and good information to have. Over the long term, we want to address that, but in the short term, we do need to address the sort of decrepit situation in the bathroom and the dormitories. The remodel that we've designed is not expected to impact significantly any future retrofit work that might need to happen. So that's why we recommend moving forward with this, even though long term we do want to make some more substantial improvements. A few pictures of those existing conditions. So this is the dormitory. The dormitory is a fairly wide area, and the beds are separated by essentially cubicle walls, so they don't really provide any privacy or sound dampening or of that sort. So here's just sort of a couple of pictures of some bunks and the lockers. So you see it's very open, and the project will be the exact opposite, is to create 6 individual rooms within that area to provide some sort of privacy. Here are the bathrooms. You can see, these are quite old and a little outdated. You can see some rust here at the bottom, and in the following slide with the interior of the 2 showers, you can see sort of the corroding pipes, and the stalls have seen better days, to put it mildly. So those are the issues that we want to correct. The project scope is pretty straightforward. It's first to remodel the dormitory to have 6 small individual rooms, and then we want to address the bathroom issue. The bathroom is the largest cost driver on this project. Not only do we want to update the fixtures, but we need to provide some gender separation. So California State Code and case law dictates that we need to have equal facilitation for both female and male firefighters. So the design team worked really hard to create a situation that took the existing small space, split it up evenly, and provided the same number of sinks, of toilets, of showers, and we did it. Unfortunately, and that'll get to my next slide, is that it does drive the cost up. Routing that plumbing and installing those fixtures is the largest piece of the remodel itself. We're also able to add ceiling insulation, which we got for a very good price. It gets quite hot up there on the 2nd floor dormitory, so adding that insulation should help a little bit. We also want to address accessibility features. So when you update a building, if it's within a certain dollar amount, less than approximately $200,000, a piece of that renovation needs to go toward making the building more accessible. And although it is a fire station that has to be manned by able-bodied individuals, there is a public access portion that of the first floor that people need to be able to access. So the accessibility feature places a handicap parking stall adjacent to the fire station, as well as creates a curb ramp that eliminates that step that you would encounter if you came from El Camino Real into the front of the fire station. So the project cost is, the contract amount is $154,000. We had 5 bids received. The really good news is that the lowest bidder is a contractor we have worked with before. They redid Fire Station 52, and everyone was quite pleased with that. We had minimal, if any, cost overruns at all on that project. However, because this is an old building, we don't know what we're exactly going to find, so we are requesting a 15% contingency for a total construction budget of $177,000. Will probably be some amount of staff time as well as a new carpeting that needs to go down there for a total expenditure of about $187,000. So those are, and again, the biggest driver of this is the plumbing portion of it, and that's the accessibility was a part of it, but really it was the need to provide equal facilitation.
It's a concrete building.
Implementation period will be 45 days of construction. That's a working day, so that's 45 working days. So we're looking at about 2.5 months of total construction time. Once the contract is awarded, Public Works and Fire and Community Development will make sure that all the parties are coordinated so that we can sort of proceed as smoothly as possible. The fire station will remain fully operational at this point, much like it was at 52 remodel. We stayed open for calls during that time. And then as just a side note, when we are putting in new lighting and new fixtures, they will all be energy efficient, low flow, of course. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How many, you mentioned you're replacing showers. What are there currently, 2 showers?
There are 2 showers. We're going from 2 showers to 4 showers.
Okay, and number of toilets?
The number of toilet/water closets is 2 each.
Okay. So have we
4 total.
have we looked at, I mean, if I understand correctly, we currently have 1 female firefighter?
Correct.
And you're taking, I mean, I've seen that space, it's extremely small. Have we looked at creating unisex space? I mean, and maybe instead of doing 4 showers, do 3 that are more functional, that on the shift when there's not female staff there, you now have 3 showers that everyone can use. It just seems like it would be so much more functional, and it would eliminate so much of your plumbing costs, because you're basically putting in 2 new sewer lines for the 2 new showers. You'd only have to do 1. You don't have to run 4 sinks. You'd only need 3 sinks. I mean, it just cuts everything down by 25% and provides you probably more efficiency in use for the department.
We did look at that option. So we looked at maybe like sort of a lockout option. So we had sort of for one side of it, we had sort of what you described. So reducing the showers by 1, sort of seeing if we could rearrange and then lock out that portion, and when it was available, unlock that portion. And when we got done, actually put it all on paper, where we had to situate those bathrooms, those showers, and those sinks, we really didn't get to any significant sort of cost savings, and we added it to the operational complexity of the bathroom itself. So I think it's something we could put it out for bid and see what came up. But when we looked at both on paper, I mean, we didn't see a lot of benefit there, even though conceptually it seems very reasonable. But when you actually put the pieces on the paper, given the space, it doesn't work out as well as we'd hoped.
But certainly, taking in consideration your advisement, will be our intent to sit down next week. Now the department has the contractor on board, and to sit down with the building department and the fire department, and to see if even now any better alternative can be considered now.
Through the chair.
Councilmember Medina?
You had said this contractor did Station 52. So I went up to Station 52 to look at their dormitories. Are they in the same, with the noise insulation, with the same type format that is up at 52 would be going into 51?
Similar, yes.
Okay. And it seemed the noise control was actually, I was impressed. You wouldn't perceive it, but it was good. The ventilation issue, as far as when the heat is on, I think it's a little much in the rooms, but that's maybe something that can be looked at for 51. You answered the timeline more or less, and so when you start doing work on the restroom facilities, then what does, and the showers and everything else, how are we going to coordinate that?
That'll be a challenge. It will, I think we've talked to fire about that and the possibility of using showers at other locations. There's a shower in City Hall, possibly at the gym, using 52. So I mean, I think there's some options we can get by with being able to make do during this time frame. Unless I missed anything, Chief, if you want to. Okay. It certainly it's not going to be easy for our firefighters during this construction period, certainly.
Okay. Other questions?
I'll just say, and if there's no other comments, it's overdue. This has been talked about since I got on the council, and I appreciate the descriptiveness and the pictures, and you were honest, and I don't know if the pictures do it true justice as far as the rust and the condition.
Looks better than this.
Yeah, it's something you wouldn't want anyway. Long overdue, let's get it done. I'll introduce the resolution.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Item I, we have a request to consider cancellation of the regular city council meeting on August 11th, 2009. Vice Mayor Ruane will not be attending. Typically, we cancel one meeting in August. It's usually the second, so I requested that this be put on the council agenda. It didn't seem foolish to cancel a meeting where you would probably have a full quorum to only hold a meeting when you didn't. So my recommendation was to cancel August 11th, and I bring it before you. Council's pleasure.
Through the chair, I think it's a wonderful idea. That is my 25th wedding anniversary day.
Well, see, I did it for Irene. I wasn't going to say it, but.
So I would like to introduce the resolution.
Anyway.
So there's two down. Okay, the resolution. Actually, all we need is a motion. So it's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we will have a second meeting in August, but not a first meeting, which is just reversed from the usual. Item J, adopt resolution authorizing city attorney to cooperate with the League of California Cities, other cities, and counties in litigation challenging the constitutionality of any seizure by state government of the city's street maintenance funds. And City Attorney, did you wish to add to that?
I'll make some comments on this. The League of California Cities, as our representative on issues of statewide significance, has continued throughout this period of severe economic challenge and the threat that seems virtually every day a different one of state seizure of local revenues. The League of California Cities has continued to advocate effectively on our behalf, and in fact I credit the League's both its relationship with the state legislature and the governor, as well as its aggressive action to represent cities up and down the state whose interests are, in fact, not always exactly the same. I credit them with the good result that we've had so far, in that we've been affected to date only in a fairly limited way by this continuing and severe fiscal crisis that is occurring at the level of our state government. Overall, however, it has been a practice in the state of California to look to local revenues in times of fiscal crisis. And in fact, since the early 1990s, over $10 billion have been diverted from local jurisdictions to the state on a continuing and permanent basis. That number will grow over the next many years as that routine, as those strategies that are already in place continue. With the severe fiscal challenges that the state is experiencing, there is a new proposal to divert over $1 billion of local gas tax revenues and approximately $350 million of redevelopment tax increment on a statewide basis to the state. The League is taking, again, aggressive action and is advising us and other cities up and down the state that this particular strategy, now being considered by the state, is in fact illegal and unconstitutional. The League is proposing the potential initiation of litigation to clarify and correct this situation if it is necessary, and the resolution that's in front of you tonight calls strictly and simply for our coordination and cooperation with the League at this time in the continuing effort to evaluate strategies and options to consider aggressive advocating against the states bringing about further damage to cities. If and when litigation requires our attention or your approval or the expenditure of city funds, we would certainly and immediately return to the City Council. This resolution is in part your authorization for us to cooperate with the League, and it is in part a strong statement of advocacy against any further erosion of traditional city revenues. A similar resolution appears on your redevelopment agency agenda, and with your consideration, I would recognize these comments as being a consolidated report on these two resolutions.
Okay, any questions of staff or action from council?
Through the chair, I'll introduce the resolution.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Mayor Franzella.
Aye. Okay, item 11, reports of commission, boards, and committees. Are none. Item 12, comments from council members. Okay, if not, we'll recess the city council at this moment and call the redevelopment agency to order. If we could have roll call, please.
Board Member Medina.
Here.
Board Member Ibarra.
Here.
Board Member O'Connell.
Here.
Vice Chair Ruane.
Here.
Chair Franzella.
Here. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 26, 2009. Minutes will stand approved as submitted unless there's any changes or corrections. Hearing none. Okay. Public hearing, hold public hearing, adopt resolution approving city manager's recommended 2009-2010 redevelopment agency and capital improvement budget. And Mr. O'Leary.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, or the board members and chair of the agency, the budget as submitted by the city manager includes not only the general fund, enterprise funds, capital improvement budget, but also special revenue funds, and the primary special revenue fund is the redevelopment agency. And the redevelopment agency is a separate legal entity from the city, and for that reason the agency is adopting the budget for the redevelopment agency. The City Council at the budget session, the budget study session on June 16th, heard a detailed report on the proposed revenues and expenditures for the redevelopment agency. At this point, I would just mention again that the budget is broken into two divisions. One is the redevelopment operations. The second is the low and moderate income fund. There's a requirement in receiving tax increment that 20% of the tax increment be set aside for low and moderate housing activities. Again, tax increment is the primary revenue of the redevelopment agency. Expenditures that are proposed continues minimal staffing for the redevelopment agency, debt service, the annual debt service for the police plaza, for the police building, and also on the low and moderate income housing side, the subsidies that are provided through owner participation agreements for both the Meridian and Paragon apartments at the crossing. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that the agency had.
Any questions of staff on the budget? Not. action from agency?
Let's approve it.
Is there adoption, introduction of resolution?
I'll introduce the resolution.
I'll introduce.
You're a little late now.
Oh.
Agency Member O'Connell, introduce the resolution. Roll call, please.
Agency Member O'Connell.
Aye.
Agency Member Medina.
Aye.
Agency Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ruane.
Aye.
Chair Franzella.
Aye. Public comment, seeing no members of the public here, we'll move on to conduct of business. Item 6, adopt resolution authorizing the Redevelopment Agency Council to cooperate with the League of California Cities, the California Redevelopment Association, and other cities and counties in litigation challenging the constitutionality of any seizure by state government of the agency's redevelopment funds. This was the item that we just had at our previous council meeting. Is there any questions or action from agency board?
Mr. Chair, I will introduce the resolution.
Roll call, please.
Agency Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Agency Member O'Connell.
Aye.
Agency Member Medina.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ruane.
Aye.
Chair Franzella.
Aye. The San Bruno Redevelopment Agency will adjourn until the next called meeting, which to be determined and will be announced in accordance with state law. I will now call the City Council back into session. City Council will be going into closed session to discuss with legal counsel and provide this, direction whether to initiate litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9C1. From there, there'll be no reportable action, and we will adjourn to the next regular City Council meeting, which will be held on July 14th at 7 o'clock p.m. here at the San Bruno Senior Center. Thank you.